Hello, hello. What's going on, yo? It's good to see you, Jordan, Christopher. What's up? It's been a while. Blaze, what's going on, Blaze? It's been a while since I've been live. I actually didn't even plan on going live today, but I was just about to watch this video here by Right Response Ministries, I think it's called. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I just get on stream and watch it with some of y'all? But actually, before I got on stream, my quite expensive Shure microphone. Um, I was trying to plug it in to the thing and it broke. So uh, so I'm using the webcam mic. Hopefully you guys can hear it. Hopefully it's not doesn't sound too bad. Um, it's definitely not as crisp quality as the Shure microphone, but whatever, it'll do. Seraphim, привет, bratан. How are you? Good quality, awesome, Blaze. By the way, I haven't seen this video at all. I've heard of it on X and a little bit on Instagram of people just, I guess, reacting to it. And then I saw some, beefs on X back and forth between some Orthodox, quoting this guy. I think his name is Joel Webman. I'm fairly familiar with Joel Webman. I think I'm also familiar with one of the other guys I saw that's on this panel. I think he has an Instagram, but anyways, totally raw reaction. I haven't seen any of this. I have no idea what they're talking about. I don't know what their, takes and points are, but we're gonna check it out here. And yeah, that's Joel Webben. The stuff I have seen I have seen some of Joel Webben. The stuff I have seen has been like fairly based stuff and pretty good stuff. Despite him being a Protestant, I think he's some sort of like Reformed Baptist, something of that nature. But some of the stuff I've seen on him is like, on Christian nationalism and some of his takes on, Judaism and the evangelical take on, the Jews sort of being the chosen people. And he had a totally different perspective than most, evangelicals or Protestants would. So the stuff I've seen from him is like pretty based stuff. So interested to see what this is. I don't think I'm gonna watch. I don't know how much of this I'm gonna watch. I'm not gonna watch an hour and 46 of this. Ain't no way I'm watching all this. But let's just get right into it and check it out.
Despite Protestants' many attempts, little has stemmed the tide of young Western men crossing over to Eastern Orthodoxy. It would seem that there's a deeper underlying reason for Eastern Orthodoxy's appeal than merely doctrine. This episode is brought to you by our premier sponsors, Armored Republic and Reese Fund.
Wait, what did you say?
Eastern Orthodoxy's appeal than merely doctrine.
Okay, so it sounds like some of the stuff he's gonna touch on isn't really gonna be doctrinal or intellectual at all. It sounds like they're gonna talk about something else. Okay.
This episode is brought.
So it doesn't sound like they have any actual intellectual arguments here. So it really does sound like it's going to be a coke fest. By the way, I haven't seen this. I just went like middle of the video, screenshotted the thing, and put it as my thumbnail. So, and I just rage baited people with the Protestants coping. But it sounds like it's going to be a coke fest. I prophesied.
To you by our premier sponsors and our flash.com.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I am joined by Wesley Todd and Michael Belch, and you're.
I think I know the one guy on the left side. What did he say his name was?
GA.
We are.
Good
GA.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. All right, we are back. GA.
We are.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I am joined by Wesley Todd and Michael Belch.
Wesley, I think I know Wesley. I think I'm familiar with his Instagram. He's always crying on Instagram about Catholics and Orthodox. Is this the same guy? There's like, I think both of these. I think there's like two guys that run an Orthodox page. They're always like memeing, either Orthodoxy or Catholicism, and they're always crying about it. Are these the same guys? If it is, then the dude is not a respectable man at all. He's a anyway, I don't want to say too much about him, but he cries a lot on Instagram if it's the same guy. And I don't really know I don't even know who the other guy is. I just know Joel Webben.
And yours truly, Pastor Joel Webben. Here we are. This is the live stream. I want to go ahead and we're trying to train our listeners. We have a new schedule, a new lineup that we're doing on a weekly basis. So here it is, doing with this live stream. It drops live on.
Why don't we pick up the speed on this? Let's try 1.5.
X and YouTube. So you can go and you can watch it at our website, rightresponseministries.com after the fact. You can find it on your favorite podcast platform, whether it be Spotify or Apple, whatever it is, app, your podcast live stream, both on YouTube today and Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, all 3 days, each our listeners. And so we act with our live to X at Right Response. Well, click the bells. The last piece of content is also on Friday episode. This lecture, you got your cranberry, your grape, how the church should think about Israel biblically.
All right, let's go back. It's too fast. I think now they're talking about it.
Covenantally, nationally, ethnically, all that kind of stuff. And then season 2 is going to be dropping starting April, and so that'll be myself and to tune in for that series. Actually available on Orthodoxy, which we've done before. We're going to talk this ministry. So here we go. Ready for the episode. Eastern Orthodoxy. We're going to talk about Eastern Orthodoxy, which we've done before. But we want to try to do it from a little bit of a different angle. And let me just say from the outset, if you are an EO bro, and you've got, 14 different, anonymous accounts on X, and your clock.
I can see why I'm going to be disappointed. Already the cope. If you're, just the passive aggressiveness of Protestants, these Calvinists, evangelical, whatever, they're all the same to me, to be honest. Just a passive aggressive, like this fake, piety, and they're all their insults are just this passive, brother, if you're an EO bro and you're on X and you have 14 anonymous accounts, that's one of the things that just rubs me the wrong way and annoys me about Protestants. It's the same with Gavin Ortland, and it seems like these other guys too. It's just this prelate, this fake piety, just brother, brother, I wanna be charitable to you, brother. I want to give you the benefit of the doubt, brother. Despite all the criticism, brother, we still love you all, brother, and we want you to know the gospel, the true gospel, brother. It's just so crazy. It's pathetic, dude. These are the dudes that preach masculinity within Protestantism. These Calvinist circles. These are the ones that preach masculinity. These dudes are pathetic, brother. I don't know how much of this I'm gonna get.
Walking in 14 hours and never touching grass. God bless you. You probably, are single-handedly responsible for getting Donald Trump elected. We've got a lot of things in common. We appreciate you. We're going to try not to beat you up. I know you think we're stupid, and we don't think you're stupid. We just think you're, a little mystic and gay, but we think intellectually, I would never try to insult you. I just insult you in other ways. You're not distinctly American. I have problems with that. But we're going to go for...
Bro, what the hell is this, dude? Am I just gonna have to end the stream right now, dude? I'm 5 minutes in.
For this episode, a different angle, right? We've done the doctrinal thing, and a lot of Protestants, not just us, but a lot of Protestants have gone from that angle, and we'll be the first to admit we want to exercise some humility I know that sounds kind of ironic because I just said the whole mystic and gay thing. That was tongue in cheek, a little bit tongue in cheek, a little bit serious. But we really do want to exercise some humility. We don't want to just.
This is like, I don't know how much. I know these guys have talked about Eastern Orthodox. I don't know how much they know, but just based on like these like comments, like this is somebody who has no idea what Eastern Orthodoxy is. Somebody that's never really looked into Eastern Orthodox. They like Googled like monasticism, and then they like saw some stuff, and then they're like, oh yeah, that's kind of mystical. Oh, that's kind of like, right, these comments like mystical and gay. Like, this is somebody who has like no idea what Eastern Christianity is. They're like, and they like conflate it with some sort of other Eastern religions like Buddhism and Hinduism and whatever else nonsense, and they're like, okay, it sounds kind of like it. Like, this is so stupid.
Make this about how we think, Eastern Orthodoxy is off on the doctrinal merits, but we want to talk about some of the cultural.
Yeah, because I mean, you can't give a compelling case when it comes to the doctrinal things, like at all. There's no compelling case for your heterodox Calvinist invention, whatever they are, dude. I think they're Calvinist Baptists of some sort.
Aspects. We want to talk about even politically, the voting patterns, these kinds of things. And then most importantly, we want to talk about masculinity. That's just a constant theme.
And I told you guys, they're going to talk about masculinity. Like, these guys are going to tell you about masculinity. Like, look at this. These are the guys that are going to tell you about masculinity. Brother, you see, brother, I have a beard. I'm a man, brother. I'm a Calvinist, pious Christian, brother. You see, I'm dressed all spiffy, brother. I have this jacket on, brother, with the jeans, and this guy, he's kind of dressed like a fobby Slav. I don't know if you guys have seen those Slavs. Fob, it means just fresh off the boat. Like, Slavs that first come to like the west of the States, they wear like the jeans with like the dress shoes. That's what he looks like, right? He looks like a fobby Slav, bro.
Over the last few years, praise God, I think providentially so, that the church and Christians, whether they be Protestant or Eastern Orthodox or Roman Catholic, in all three of these major spheres of Christianity, there's been a massive increase of people realizing the need for a biblical, robust masculinity. We realize that the church across the
what does that even mean? Like, Protestants say this, like, right, like, biblical. Is it a biblical masculine? Is it a biblical truth? Like, what does that mean? Biblical according to who? Like, according to that particular pastor's interpretation of what is biblical, right? Because you have, right, LGBTQ, LGTV, whatever, affirming Protestant churches. They think they're biblical, dude. There's other Protestant churches you're not in communion with, like, at all. You want nothing to do with, Joel Webben, that they think they're biblical. So what is it like? It's just like an exegesis debate. Like, what does that even mean? A biblical church, brother. Brother, just go to a biblical church. Biblical masculinity, brother.
Board is lacking greatly in masculinity, which gives rise to guys like Andrew Tate, who we'll probably talk about a little bit later this week. Michael.
So is that the approach they're taking? Like, he thinks that's what Orthodoxy offers, is like this base, like Andrew Tate, like masculinity? Is that what they think? All right, to be fair, like, I do see some of that among some like Ortho bros online. Not so much in person. I noticed this online, right? Dudes that are like, always, talking down to women and like, I'm just gonna be a monk, dude. Like, every woman is a this. I do see some of that. Like, I think like the people behind those accounts are like young 16-year-old boys that like don't know shit about Orthodoxy. They like just discovered it like, a year ago. But if that's his low tier take, like, I guess I could see it. So I could see it coming from like, sort of Western Christianity. Young men are flocking right to Orthodoxy because just kind of the evangelical sphere of Protestantism in the West is very like, feminine and gay. I'll just say that. But here's what you guys but like there are ethnic Protestant communities in America too. Right? There's like Russian evangelicals, Ukrainian evangelicals, it's like Romanian evangelicals, right? These Eastern European, they're like large communities too. And here's the thing, like they're extremely conservative and masculine. And yet there are still people leaving these communities. So like, what's the purpose of people leaving these very conservative, right, quote unquote, masculine communities? Well, because the reasons are intellectual, dude. They're intellectual, doctrinal, historical reasons why people are leaving. It makes sense if you're leaving from like these American, right, churches, like the concert churches. But like, if you go to ethnic Protestant churches, they're not like that at all, dude. They laugh at that shit. So like, but there are still mass apostasy from these very conservative ethnic Protestant churches. Like, why is that happening, dude? Clearly, because it's not of this whole gay culture and evangelicalism that you want to cry about.
Was preparing an episode for that we're going to do our best to address Andrew Tate and all those kinds of things on Wednesday. So I'm going to hand it over to Wes to kick us off a little bit and outline this particular episode.
Yeah, absolutely. When the rubber meets the road, it's oftentimes a lot different than you imagine it to be. So imagine.
Is this the guy that's on Instagram, this West guy? I got it because somebody sent a meme recently, and I think he's the page owner. If you guys know in the chat, like, is this guy on Instagram? Like, it's the guy that's like memeing all the time and crying about Catholics and Orthodox. Is this the guy? And I can't find it. He looks like the guy. It looks like that profile picture. Anyways, I don't look for it, but let's hear what he has to say.
In that you're training for apologetics and you go out in the street and you actually engage with people. And you've read Van Til's Defense of the Faith, you've read Bonson, you've read Rushdoony, By What Standard, and you have an idea of what apologetics and everything looks like. And then you go out and you actually interact with people and you realize once you get there that it never goes the way you intended to go. Or it never falls along the lines that you thought it would. Every question, denomination, baptism, this, that, or the other, they have their academic, intellectual questions, problems, debates, where pages, thousands upon pages in books have been spilled trying to solve them. But then there's practically just on the ground what actually happens and how people are convinced. It's very easy to think. It's the arguments, it's the syllogisms, it's the logic and the reason that if you take someone and you lay it out for them and you really just answer every objection, then they'll be convinced. And I would say for many years that I thought that's how, if you have a disagreement with your spouse or like maybe not your children when they're young, but when they get older, you reason back and forth. And when you do that, the best argument will win. The problem is that's not just the case. People don't typically arrive at the positions they hold. Not always, but the average person, even the average man, does not typically arrive at the positions he holds because of that intellectual rigor, but he arrives them because of emotional reasons. He has friends and family that take a certain view. He goes to a church that teaches something like this. He's surrounded by this influence at work. The reason we come to a lot of our decisions, again, are not that hard, intellectually rigorous work of parsing throughout all of it, studying all of that. We do it because, you go to a church that's Calvinist. Like when I first became a Calvinist, why was that? Well, I had a pastor that taught Calvinism from the pulpit, and I was surrounded by Calvinists. Mm-hmm. Now, on the back end, I have a fully orbed defense of Calvinism, and I fully believe that it's true. But the reason it changed, and it happened to change within a couple of years of starting to attend a Reformed church versus an evangelical kind of Arminian church. Well, what was it? Did I come into better arguments? Some, sure. But I was also just surrounded by those kinds of people. And so when it comes to the Eastern Church, so many Americans, they're so sick of modernity. We don't even realize it. It's like being homesick without being able to put your finger on it. We're sick of cheap apartment complexes. We're sick of shallow friends. We're sick of consumeristic cultures and lifestyles. And so, man, especially the Western man, he's longing for something deeper. It's been said that he's surrounded by all this beauty that the Western world made, but he lacks the worldview. He lacks everything that made it there in the first place. And so he longs for beauty. He longs for tradition. He longs to be grounded and rooted, but nothing is like that. And so you take a man like that has feminism that's infected his church, modernity everywhere he goes, and he's trying.
Yeah, so I figured they were going to take this take. Okay, that's an interesting take. I mean, maybe it's just the circles I'm in are like very sort of like intellectual and apologetic circles, and the people in these circles were, at least I think the majority of people in these circles that I'm in, I think are convinced because of the intellectual reasons. I don't know if it was just these surface level sort of emotional arguments that he's appealing to, but I could see a lot of people coming, not necessarily because of like the intellectual reason. They don't sort these things out before they enter the church. They just kind of come, for whatever other reasons, which is fine, and then they'll enter the church and they'll start sorting out, whatever presuppositions they held, whatever biases they had. They start to sort of flip. Their mind has to sort of flip. They have to understand things differently. They thought icons were idolatry. They have to sort that out. I see that as well, but I mean, most of the converts I know came for and converted because of intellectual reasons. So I don't know.
Trying all of this, and then one day he walks in, is invited, brought in somehow, encounters strange and foreign to him. And as he's thinking about spirituality, he's thinking about the church and palettes and stage lights on, they didn't see a woman on stage and they said, I kind of like this.
Right.
That's so much of it.
Yeah.
Not all of it.
It wasn't Hillsong,
Okay, so they're just like yapping about, the sort of modernity, feminized, infiltrated, evangelical, charismatic Christianity, whatever you want. And there is a lot of that. These churches are quite massive. Sadly, there's a lot of young people there, a lot of young women, there, which makes sense because women are inclined to be very emotional, and these things are attractive to a lot of women.
Like Taylor Swift, with instead of singing about Travis Kelce, you just replace and smoke machines and all that kind of they want something that's rooted. They want something that feels steady, stable. Everything else is shaking around them, so they want security, stability, tradition, something that's old, tried, true, tested, and
that's not Protestantism. Like, how can you say that with a straight face? Like, look at him. Like, he can't even say it. I think he knows that he's being dishonest. Like, he's looking down at something that's tried, something that's tested, something that stood the test of time. Bro, it ain't Protestantism, bro. Especially like your form of Protestantism, right? Baptism. Right? It came somewhere around that that Reformation era and after it.
It even has the veneer of that, whether the substance is there or not. And we can make arguments about whether it is or whether it's not. But anything that even has the appearance of tradition, old, tested, tried, true, is going to do exceptionally well in our incredibly fake and gay culture that we live in today. And so I don't think that this was always a thing. I tweeted out a couple of days ago. I said, I think that Eastern Orthodoxy is a fad, and the EO bros, God bless them, they immediately got.
Yeah, look at again with like this pathetic fake piety, dude. Like this, I can't stand people like this. I can't stand people like this. Like a lot of times people will accuse ortho bros, whatever, of being mean, but like at least when we are being quote unquote mean, like we're being genuine. But like they always have to put on like this fake piety, just God bless the ortho bros. God bless them, brother. But they got very upset over the truth, brother. I just spoke the truth, brother.
In the chat, and we're like 2,000-year-old fad, and like, what do you mean a fad? It's Eastern Orthodoxy was there, before the foundation.
I mean, calling Eastern Orthodoxy a fad is wild. Converting to Islam, I think, is a fad. But even Islam has been around longer than Protestantism. So I always find it hilarious when like Protestants debate Muslims on like historicity and stuff, and like they get into the patristics, historical centuries, right? They get into those 7th, 8th, 9th centuries, 10th century, and they're like having these sort of historical debates with Muslims, and they're like, the Protestants are quoting church fathers and stuff, and I'm like, dude, you didn't even exist then. Like, if only like Muslims were like smart enough to educate themselves on all these things, they would just like every time they interact with a Protestant, they'll just go like, dude, you appeared in like the 16th century. Like, I'm not even going to talk about historical aspects with you. Like, you're quoting church fathers. Like, you probably disagree with a bunch of them. Like, why are you even quoting them, dude? Like, if I was a Muslim, dude, I would freaking eat Protestants for breakfast, dude.
In the world were laid, and like, making those kinds of arguments. And I think they misunderstood my point. I don't mean that it's a fad.
All right, guys, we have Amanda here, bro. Protestants are the followers of Christ. What does that mean? What does that mean, followers of Christ? Mormons claim to be followers of Christ. Anti-Trinitarian groups of various sects claim to be followers of Christ. What does that mean? We are the church that Jesus. How do you know that? What is your epistemic framework for this? Like, this is such a like low-tier Protestant shit. Like, this is just like emotional female shit, dude. Like, excuse my language. Like, this is so stupid. Like, I see these low-tier like stupid comments with no substance all the time, dude, on my freaking IG and in my DMs. Like, the audacity that Protestants even have to just spew diarrhea out of their mouth like this with zero substance. Like, it's pathetic, dude.
Everywhere. I meant here.
Right.
I meant in America. And that's just undebatable. That's inarguable. You can look at the statistics and the graphs and the charts, and Eastern Orthodoxy has certainly had a rise in America, and it's a very recent rise.
Mostly post-COVID, because a decent amount of them didn't shut down.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, yep. They stayed open. You have dudes with beards doing, low register bass Gregorian chants, and they're open. And meanwhile,
what? I don't think I've heard a Gregorian chant a single time at my parents' yeah, somebody mentioned, I think it was Jordan mentioned, like, this is like wiki apologetics, right? This is just straight up wiki. Like
Gregorian chant doing, low register bass Gregorian chants. The dog.
What a retard.
It's like ripped with like an 18-pack, and then like the little quivering chihuahua, and you've got like the quivering Russell Moore, wearing his Hobbit mask, this iconic picture that I can't get out of my head, which is terrible. It's stuck with me for the rest of my life probably. But he's like double masked, and bragging about getting the vax. This Hobbit got his vaccine, and teamed up with David French and whatever, Francis Collins, and they're all doing the bidding of Fauci and run churches to begin with Beth Moore preaching on Sunday for a 20-minute TED talk.
This is freaking boring, bro. Like, get to something, dude. You just ran
talk and the Jesus is my boyfriend worship and smoke machine lights are turned down low and it gets shut down. And
they're just kind of shitting on that form of Protestantism that we like to shit on, that sort of charismatic, progressive, right, modern evangelicalism, whatever you want to call it. Okay.
While the Ortho Bros are they're
back at it.
Yeah, they're doing church in a masculine way on the Lord.
So that's essentially their whole argument is like, oh, people are leaving because of masculinity, but we have masculinity here in the West too, dude. Look at our Calvinist Baptist churches, dude. We're masculine, dude. Is that essentially like what their take is going to be? Like that's their take. It's just very like surface level, like stands has no sort. It's not an argument in like the the intellectual sphere, the debate sphere, the apologetic sphere at all. It's just like it's just surface level shit. Like this is what I think, and and this is what I think, brother.
Lord's Day, and then on Monday morning they're over at Father so and so's garage, putting up iron, lifting weights, and so and is old, and so on the backdrop of modernity, feminism, COVID, BLM, all these kinds of things, Eastern Orthodoxy went to the moon as a fad. Not in the world as a whole. That wasn't my point in America.
It's just a baseless, like, this is what I think argument. Like, I mean, okay, I guess I didn't really expect them to give any sort of intellectual arguments. Although, like, this is supposed to be the intellectual side of Calvinism, right? Like, these guys are supposed to be the guys online when it comes to apologetics, right? From what I understand, like, Joel Webman like engages in apologetics. He defends his form of Protestantism, right? And he critiques other forms of Protestantism and other, faiths outside of their particular denomination when it comes to the pre-denominational churches. From what I'm saying, he critiques Catholicism and Eastern Orthodox. So
what's my point?
In the world, so if you,
I mean,
of your three large, I don't know if you call them denominations, but we could say traditions. Catholicism.
Okay, there we go. He didn't want to call them denominations. Okay, he probably has had that spammed like all over his comments, and in his DMs are like, we're pretty denominational, dude. So good job, Orthodox, you doing your job.
Clocking in.
The good thing about like a lot of these sort of toxic Orthodox culture is like you guys are educating a lot of people, right? By like constantly being mean to people, I guess.
1.5.
But like, bro, like these dudes deserve it, dude. Like these dudes deserve it.
Billion, might be up to 2 at this point. Protestantism is around 800 to about 1 billion adherents. Eastern Orthodoxy, the last I'm aware of the statistics, it's about 200 to 250 million, and that number is declining. So it's kind of rising in the West, but as far as general religion numbers rising, it's going to occupy a smaller share by 2050. And it's tough because I've met many, seen many online who would say, my parish is exploding. We have so many catechumens. We have so many new people, so many.
It's true. The parish that I attend, it's exploding. I mean, we have, I think at one point we had like 35 catechumens or something. I think we might have close to 30 now too. So I mean, they are. I mean, it's evident. Like you talk to people, whatever parish they're from, it's it's growing tremendously.
Many families, so many young men. The world is a big place, my friend. You definitely may be experiencing a growth, as in your parish may have grown by 50%, 100%, doubled in size. That absolutely could be true in the micro, in the small picture, COVID and these different bumps. But the integrity of a movement, my exhortation would be, is how long it lasts. The final part of the story is not written at the beginning or written when the movement is exploding and everybody's going to it. It's what are the outcomes of it? What are the fruit of it? Does it have a meaningful impact that in generations?
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen the fruits of Orthodoxy for 2,000 years. Look at our saints. What have you seen within Protestantism? Divisions among divisions among divisions. Where are your saints, dude? Nowhere to be found.
To go, they'll talk about how the Orthodox Church impacted politics and culture and everything in America.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, from like a debate perspective, like, it has absolutely nothing to do with anything. Whether somebody is a majority, that's nothing to do with whether they're true. Like Roman Catholics use this low tier argument, like, there's more of us, therefore we are the church. It's a fallacy, dude.
America, and I can't jump to the future and say the answer to that either. But just because there's a lot of growth and a lot of excitement and a lot of explosion, those things aren't inherently bad. It's like the search for tradition and masculinity and family, and they have to be judged by the fruit, judged by what comes out of the tree.
Right.
And you know what's funny? I've heard these I've heard these arguments from Protestants. I think it's because a lot of Protestants live in their echo chambers. There's like, I had a conversation with a Protestant friend of mine, and he told me, he said, okay, like your intellectual, arguments are convincing, your historical arguments are convincing, but like we have these fruits in Protestantism, and it was his particular sect of Protestantism that is very new, but they're like, they were persecuted, and like I guess he's grew up around this sect his entire life, and to him, like Orthodoxy is just like this cultural thing that's like far, he as far as he's concerned, like he doesn't see the fruits of it. So he was like, but what, but but, but Val, where are the fruits of Orthodoxy? And I mean, I snapped. I snapped. The audacity, like it's just that a lot of people just live in their echo chamber, like right. They just know about their particular sect of Protestantism, and most people don't even know that. Most people don't even know that. This guy was like, fairly educated on his particular sect of Protestantism, their history, and some of their sort of miracles and happenings and whatnot that he heard, growing up, etc.
It's interesting what marketing research has shown us about why people make decisions. And to some degree, that's what we're talking about today, not so much the apologetic for or against the doctrines of Eastern Orthodoxy, but rather.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm going to wash the floor with you if you get into some of the doctrinal, historical aspects of it, right? When we get into, what your framework, what your metaphysical framework is, you know, finding your first principles, your justifications for these things that you just presuppose in your paradigm, in your Protestant paradigm. This is especially common among Reformed sort of Calvinist leading guys. Their arguments sound great if you allow these presuppositions within their framework. But when you start challenging their presuppositions, their whole worldview falls apart. Otherwise, if you just kind of, if you interact with the Calvinists and you just, breeze by a bunch of the things that they just presuppose within their, their arguments, it sounds great. It sounds convincing, dude. Calvinism sounds good. But then you start challenging, you're like, their whole worldview is garbage. It falls apart. Dude. It's floating in the air. It has no justification. There's no base. Even these guys, these guys are acknowledging, like, that. Let's hear what he said. Like, look, they're literally acknowledging that, like, we have a hard time, like, giving intellectual arguments that, debunk Eastern Orthodoxy. Eastern Orthodoxy is superior in this sense.
So much about why people make decisions. And to some degree, that's what we're talking about today, not so much the apologetic for or against the doctrines of Eastern Orthodoxy, but.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Because in the apologetics sphere, like, we're winning. Like, we're winning. I don't remember ever seeing a debate between a Protestant and an Orthodox Christian to where, I leave that debate or listen to that debate and leave thinking, that Protestant argument was convincing. I don't think I've ever seen a debate like that. That tells you a lot.
Rather, why it seems that so many are moving in that direction. And marketing research has shown us that most people do much more work after they make a purchase to justify it than they do beforehand. Most people, in their gut, they.
Yeah, I could see that. I know I'm on a lot of converts. A bunch of things, they'll become catechumens in the church, and a bunch of things still don't make sense to them, and they'll start to work through those things as as catechumens in the church. But here's the thing about that, though. The reason why these people kind of jump the gun, right, to go on their journey of exploring, inquiring, and essentially becoming a catechumen within the Orthodox Church, is because they're convinced that anything outside of Orthodoxy is not true. That's the thing. A bunch of right there are certain doctrinal dogmatic things within the Orthodox Church that they may still be right battling as they come into the church. But at that point, it just becomes either nihilism or orthodoxy. Because these people coming into the church are convinced that Protestantism isn't it. Whatever aspect of, Oriental Orthodoxy, Roman Catholicism is not it. And that's why they're working through these things in the Orthodox Church, because they don't really want to be sort of like caught right in the middle, sitting on the fence of like, whoa, I know Protestantism isn't true. I'm still dealing with a bunch of things in the Orthodox Church, but I'm unconvinced of all these other worldviews. And they just kind of feel in the middle, tugging back and forth. And they don't want to be kind of like churchless, don't have a community, just be a loner sort of. So they're like, well, the one that I'm not fully convinced of is Orthodoxy, but that's the one I'm working through and exploring. So I'm just going to join the church as a catechumen and work through those things. Because all these other worldviews, all these other paradigms, I'm convinced that they're not true. So these are some of the nuances that I think they're leaving out here. By the way, this is my first time ever. I've never watched. I don't even know who this guy is. This is my first time ever seeing this. So you guys are getting like totally, raw reaction. And I thought they were going to get into some of the, doctrinal theological stuff, because those are the things that I love to talk about, and those are the things that, I obsess over and nerd over, and I'd love to discuss those things. But it sounds like they're getting to a lot of these, surface level reasons and stuff. So I don't know how much else I'm going to watch of this. I'll probably watch a little bit more, maybe skip through, see if they have, touch on some other things, and then we'll comment on those things.
Have something they want to buy, and then they buy it. And then the intellectual work comes in on their part to go through, this was a great purchase because ... And this is something that I think is really a fascinating thing to think about when it.
Yeah. And as I explained, like, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's a reason for that. Like, there's a reason for that. Because it's either orthodoxy or nihilism for a lot of these people. That's it. Ed, thank you for the $4.99, brother. God bless you. So it's either orthodoxy or nihilism. That's why they jump the gun, and then they start, working out through these, there's sort of things that they're still struggling to understand or, make sense of.
When it comes to cultural Christianity, because in a sense, we want America to be a Christian nation, but a particular expression of Christianity even. And as we're thinking about Protestantism in the West, in America, there is a sense where we want, when people to think of Christianity, we want them to think, yeah, that's the sort of lifestyle that I'm not saying, I'm aware that no one seeks God, right? But as far as what people think about when they think of Protestant,
the Calvinist presuppositions here are hilarious. I was like fairly familiar with Calvinism in like my late teens, early 20s. I like really dug into Calvinism. I even have John Calvin's Institute of the Christian Faith book. Boring read. But like you see, like he's just throwing that in there like it's just, it's just self-evident. Like, I understand nobody seeks God. Right? Because I forgot what the theological term is for them. I'm like sort of out of touch with these sort of Protestant theological terminology. I think monergism, right? They're monergism. Is that what it's called? Monergism or synergism is, we're both. There's essentially like you can't seek God, like God can only seek you. Monergism, I believe it's called monergism. Anyways, it's just Calvinist bullshit. I believe the Synod of Jerusalem in 1672 addressed it. I'd have to go and reread that Synod. It's not too long of a read to kind of, get familiar with some of the things that the Orthodox Church condemns when it comes to Calvinism.
Protestantism in America, we want them to think of us as those are the fighters, those are the muscular. That's the kind of rigorous tradition that I want to be part of. And there is a sense where whoever wins that image debate or war doesn't necessarily win the doctrinal argument, but it does kind of win the cultural Christianity war. Mm-hmm. What will be the expression of Christianity in a nation or in a tradition based on what that version of Christianity is doing with itself in the public eye.
Right.
Yep.
And I think, part of my argument, and I understand it's not a doctrinal argument. I never really claimed that it was. But that war for who's going to get who's going to win the day for being the visible sign of Christianity.
It sounds like he was about to say the visible church, but he avoided saying that because Protestants don't hold any form of visible church. Well, I think he doesn't. Maybe some sort of Protestant. They sort of have this branch theory. But he said the visible form of Christianity. That's hilarious. One day, Joel Webbin's he's gonna have enough of this, Calvinist LARP, and he's gonna come to Orthodoxy. It sounds like he's sort of, exploring it through his Wikipedia searches. I mean, there's a reason why these guys aren't able to give, sort of doctrinal arguments. The only one that really engages with it is Gavin Ortland, and in a very dishonest manner, I might say. But yeah, these guys are not interested in going to war with the Orthodox apologists doctrinally. That's why they're giving these arguments, because these things you can bicker over all day. You can bicker over these things all day. And I'd love to talk to them about these things, but things, by the way, I know he has a program where he invites people on. So Joel Webbin, I would love to come on, or these other guys, whatever. I don't really know what they do. I would love to come on and we can talk about these things and have a conversation. These aren't doctrinal debates. So you don't have to sweat over it. Just, bring me on and we can talk about some of these cultural, nationalistic, ethnic things, whatever other arguments you want to bring up, whether Orthodoxy is a fad and whatnot. We can talk about all these things. Break bread over it.
This nation and these.
Jordan, thank you so much for the $49.99. God bless you, Jordan. Thank you, Val. You were very influential in my journey to Orthodoxy. I am so happy to hear that. Thank you, Jordan. I do remember you, Jordan. I think you're Jordan. You're in SIG's Discord, right? If I'm not mistaken. And I do remember when you and your family officially became catechumens. I think you DM'd me. Always happy to see, intellectual young men coming into Orthodoxy. It just makes Orthodoxy better.
United States of America, it will never be Eastern Orthodoxy.
Right.
It won't.
Huh. Okay.
Because it's not American. It will never be this nation in these United States of America. It will never be Eastern Orthodoxy.
Right.
There it is. There's the ultimate cope right there. So essentially, it sounds like he's kind of arguing that Protestantism is American culture. But what's funny is that not his form of Protestantism, though, right? I believe there's some sort of Reformed Baptist. These are not the sort of Christian doctrines, if you want to say that America was built on, right? It was like the Puritans and those dudes that were kicked out of England and stuff. It wasn't his form of Protestantism. So I'm curious what he's gonna say. Because America certainly will never be Calvinist, dude. Calvinism is not American, dude. It's not American, dude. It is very much Western European.
It won't, because it's not America.
Right.
And it never will be.
Which is funny, because isn't Joel Webbin, isn't he Irish descent? Is that an Irish last name? How do you spell his last name? Webbin? Oh. It's English. Okay. Anyways.
It simply won't. We are not Eastern mystics. America is that's just not what we are. Catholicism could win.
Okay.
I hope it doesn't. I think that America, I know America, its tradition, its history, its roots, its origin is Protestant.
Yeah, but not your form of Protestantism, dude. Not your form of Protestantism. That is not American, dude.
Overwhelmingly Protestant. Now, in terms of which.
So this is an interesting, they're kind of going into these, nationalistic. I assume they're going to go into some of the ethnic arguments too, because that's one that people like to talk about too, that Orthodoxy is overly ethnic, it's Eastern, because it seems like he's going in that direction. Okay.
Is Protestant, overwhelmingly Protestant. Now, in terms.
But here's the thing, dude. So I wasn't born in the United States, but I've lived here, pretty much my entire life. I came here as a little kid. So I'm Eastern, I'm Eastern Orthodox. I grew up in an Eastern community. I am very pro-American, dude. I'm a patriot, dude. So to sort of conflate these things and say you can't be Eastern Orthodox, it seems like he's insinuating that, and be American is just wild to me, dude. That's wild, dude. I'm Eastern culturally, I'm very look at the flags in the back. I'm very Eastern culturally, dude. And I'm still I'm American, bro. I'm the definition, right? Of an American. I'm not a first generation American, but I'm the definition of an American, right? It's this melting pot of individuals that come here. You can still be very Eastern, even culturally, like myself, be an Eastern Orthodox Christian and still be very pro-American, very nationalistic. He's trying to connect religion with this sort of nationalism, and I assume he's gonna dump ethnicity in there as well. As it's proud to be American is to be Protestant, dude. No, and he just brought up Catholicism too. But I think he's trying to say that Catholicism is sort of also American, but Eastern Orthodoxy, no. So that's wild to me. And also a bunch of American converts I know, they're very nationalistic, dude. They don't just yeah, there are some people very black. They're the West is garbage, the West has fallen, and they just trash the West. But most of them are very hopeful, dude, very pro-American. They love their country, dude.
Which Protestant denomination, I don't particularly care. I think that you can have a pan. That's what Stephen Wolfe is always talking about. That America is a pan-Protestant nation, and the Christian nationalism that he espouses would be a pan-Protestant project. And so, in these United States, it would be distinctly Christian, a little less distinctly Protestant, but still you would have that Protestant feel.
That's the thing, is the stuff that I've heard from Joel Webben is the Christian nationalism stuff. And if you take that Christian nationalism route, essentially you have to sort of lean towards that Eastern Orthodox concept of nationalism, to where you have a religious monarch. I think that's why he has a hard time saying that his version of Christian nationalism is less Protestant. What's up, John? How you doing, man? I've heard a bit, actually, John. I've heard a bit from Wes about you. I know you guys do the buddy streams. I think you guys do them weekly, right, John? It's good to see you in here, brother. I hope you do come to the fullness of the truth. God bless you. And yeah, guys, go check out Wes's streams. Wes is a member of the parish that I attend. Go check out his page, actually. I think it's Mr. Westford. Mr. Westford. John, if you can drop it in the chat, people can go check it out. I know you guys do your buddy buddy talks, but I don't know. It's been a while since I tuned in to you guys, but good to see you, John.
And then that's at the federal level, and then at the state level, you could, and in theory, you could have state churches, but you wouldn't have a federal church because, if at the federal level, the national church was whatever Anglican, and then Mississippi is Baptist. Well, that would conflict. So you wouldn't have a national church. You could theoretically have state churches, but they would be within that pan Anglican churches or whatever, because still of whatever. On paper, it's even broader. So, but the point is that works in an American context, and one this is one of the things that we could get into a little bit later on. But the Protestant faith, that particular tradition within Christianity, I think has the necessary ingredients, the working parts that makes it far more conducive to being a universal lowercase c Catholic faith. Whereas Eastern Orthodoxy has like
it just sounds like essentially he's just preaching ecumenism of some sort. Most Protestants are ecumenists in a way. Like if you talk to Protestants, and I assume Joel has the same view, they'll say, oh, there's true believers in all these, quote unquote denominations. So, I mean, yeah, he's just kind of taking the
geographic and defined by scripture. All right. So all over the world, you would have churches that, that publicly preach.
Like, it's hilarious that he keeps going to this. These churches all over the world are defined by scriptures. Then how come you can't agree on anything within Protestantism? Protestantism is like this blanket term, like within Protestantism, we have, 47,000, however many it is, sects. Like, you can't agree on anything. So how can you sort of have this united Christian nation if there's going to be all these divisions within these sects? Essentially, people are just kind of having their own little versions of Christianity that is defined by the scriptures, but it's my interpretation of the scriptures, right? The Pentecostals are going to have their churches with their interpretation of the scripture. The Baptists are going to have theirs. The Reformed Calvinist guys are going to have theirs. The Presbyterians are going to have theirs. The Episcopalians are going to have whatever,
Preach the word, pray the word, sing the word in spiritual songs and hymns and psalms, and publicly seeing, seeing the word in the only two images prescribed to us by the Lord Jesus himself, being the Lord's Supper and baptism.
Yeah, I mean, you're just preaching your version of Protestantism here. It's arbitrary, dude. It's your exegesis of what you see as biblical Christianity. It's your exegesis, dude.
So you would have the substance of worship across.
Like, you don't even have a concept of worship in Protestantism, dude. Like, your tradition does not have a concept of worship, dude. It changes with time, dude. It's like whatever is popular then, that's your concept of worship.
That the music is loud, or if it's soft, or is at some level, within theory, an argument from permissibility, they could be interchangeable, but the substance of worship is cognitive, to think about the scripture, what it means, and how it applies. So Christian meditation for somebody who's Western is going to be thinking in those terms. I'm going to meditate on God's word day and night. That means I'm going to be thinking about thy law, his law word, filling my mind, not God. That's something that is pretty much it. First time, like a 7-syllable phrase, and you would repeat that. Ugandan church that still maintains some Ugandan cultural act. And so I get it. But long run, not just a 5-year timeline, but looking at a 50-year timeline, I don't think it's going to happen. And if it did happen, if Eastern Orthodoxy won the day, then you can't have both. You would lose America.
Yeah.
So,
wait, what? I missed this whole thing.
You Eastern Orthodoxy can, if Eastern Orthodoxy wins, America loses. You have no more America.
Huh? What I missed?
Okay, you and
They're just a different
that,
nation.
yeah, and that would have to do like not only with the culture and the aesthetics and all these things, but I absolutely think it would play into immigration. We've talked about this before. We won't.
Okay, I get what they're saying. Essentially, he's just saying because Eastern Orthodoxy is so, sort of tied to the East, that you're going to lose all these, traditional things about American culture, which is just stupid, dude. Like, you can be American Eastern Orthodox, own your guns, eat cheeseburgers, and have American breakfast. Like, that's not an issue, dude. Like, Eastern Orthodoxy isn't like imposing whatever particular culture, ethnicity that it comes from on the culture. They get in some senses, right? Maybe you can argue this in some sense, maybe. Um, but like you go to like an American, OCA church, like it's very American, like it's very American Orthodox, right? So I don't really understand this.
Won't get into today, but you look at voting patterns.
The issue is actually that American culture is like infiltrating these churches in a negative way, not like American culture, like the positive aspects of American culture. I'm kind of talking about like the Western, feminist, liberal, progressive culture. Like the issue is with that culture, right? Penetrating these churches, right? This cult, right? Sort of liberalizing these churches, kind of the same issues that Protestants have developed and the Catholics have developed over time of right infiltration by these sort of progressive within their church. So like that's actually the issue. The issue isn't like right that like the East is going to impose these certain cultural the Romanian church. America is going to become Romanian if everyone's Romanian Orthodox. Like it's a silly take, I think.
Evangelicals, despite how fake and gay evangelicals are, I pick on evangelicals.
Bro, you're not far from him, dude. You're not far from him. Look how these guys are sitting. His foot is facing the other direction, though. They're afraid to like have the bottom part of their knee touch like the top of their other knee, because that's like super gay. Like if you sit like you gotta sit like that's masculine right there, dude. That's Calvinist masculinity right there, bro.
More than anybody else because I am one. So I understand the problems. And yet still, despite how bad evangelicals have been as of recent, it's not even close in terms of voting against abortion, voting for.
All right, we agree on all these things.
Republican. Welcome, Pastor Chase Davis. Thanks for coming on the
11.
Oh, we got another guy joining. All right.
And we're still here.
Great. All right, so we're talking about Eastern Orthodoxy. Chase, give you a little bit of context. We've talked about this before, and we've dealt with it from the doctrinal side of things.
They have? Okay, so he has something on Eastern Orthodoxy then from the doctrinal side. I'd have to check that out. Huh. Is it alive, maybe? Okay, so it looks like they have few videos on it. Okay, so they have one with Joshua Shuping, that ex-Orthodox priest that apostatized and now embraces some form of Protestantism. I have his book actually. I have Joshua Shuping's book, Why He Left Orthodox. I haven't gotten to reading it, so I'd have to go through that. And then he has one, Is Eastern Orthodox Heresy? All right, so I'll probably have to check that out then.
And we're trying to exercise a little bit of humility in this episode and just admitting up front that a lot of Protestant apologetics are falling flat.
Yeah, they suck, dude. Like you guys suck.
It's not working. And so we're trying to deal with some of the other things, some of the cultural aspects. I had a tweet, part of why we're talking about it is I had a tweet that got, a decent amount of attention last week where I said, aside from the scriptural arguments, that
religion. Now,
for me, I'm a Christian first.
All right, let's see what this guy has to say. This Pastor Chase with the receding hairline. What you got to say?
But second, and it's a fairly close second, I would not go Eastern Orthodoxy into Eastern Orthodoxy simply on the basis of the fact that I'm an American. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've made that argument. I think it's a compelling argument.
That's their compelling argument. I would not go Eastern Orthodox because I'm American. Being American means to be Protestant. It means to be Calvinist, dude. Like that's like Calvinism is anti-American, bro. If you want to be right consistent across the board, Calvinism is very anti-American, bro. Like, be a Puritan.
The Eastern Orthodox tradition is foreign to the American experience. It's a foreign religion. Now,
some aspects of it, I think, are foreign in the case, the fact that not many people are familiar with sort of Eastern Orthodoxy. It's sort of like this secret in the West. So in that sense, yeah, but again, I'm not. I grew up in America, but I come from the East, so I have a different perspective on it.
One could argue that Protestant Christianity was also foreign at one point to different contexts. Same thing with Roman Catholicism was foreign. The church was foreign to different contexts at different times. But in terms of the American experience, Protestantism is where it's at. And so the idea that you could go to an Eastern Orthodox church and it's a new thing. I don't know what God's plan for the future is for America, but I don't foresee it being Eastern Orthodoxy. I foresee it being Protestant Christianity because it has been, provided certain things happen. But yeah, it's even we can go so far as to say the way of doing theology in the Eastern Orthodox tradition cultivates a way of doing theology and intellectual discourse in a way that's so incongruent with the Western tradition that it's almost hard to even have theological discussions because when they're talking about growing in Christ likeness, there's a whole other way that they're.
Yeah, that's the thing is like in Eastern Orthodoxy, a lot of these concepts are like Christ likeness. We have we have massive works from the fathers and patristics and saints, right, on theosis. So these are well-developed doctrines that just don't exist in Protestantism. Like as obsessive as Protestants are when it comes to soteriology, like these developed doctrines don't exist. Like Protestants just they want to like have these these sort of easy formulas when it comes to soteriology, like and they're still like underdeveloped doctrines. It's just like everything is so scholastic. It's like this plus this equals salvation. This plus this is salvation. Like, no, that's not what salvation is, and it's never been like that historically. So, I mean, I don't even like this guy's not even giving a good argument. He's just saying like Eastern Orthodoxy is not like Protestant. Like, no shit, it's not like Protestantism. That's his argument. It's not like Protestantism. It's weird. Okay.
They're approaching spirituality and our knowledge of God. Now, they may have some insights to offer us there. We may be able to learn some things and exchange ideas in that way. But I think if we just view it as like a denominational switch, like it's just another option out there, I think that's a grave mistake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
I agree there. It's not that at all.
Chase, you've earlier we rooted it into masculinity. So young men, they're done with being weak. They're done with being talked down to. They're done with feminism.
All right, so they're talking about like they're bringing up this whole masculinity argument that the evangelicals of America are gay and they're tired of the fog machines and the concerts. They already touched on this. It's like repetitive.
We view most evangelicals view anything that would turn off a lost person as a problem.
Yeah, evangelical. We're talking about the gay evangelicals. Let's see what else they get into.
Right.
I wish I got like some timestamps or something, so because I'm like reacting to this for the first time, guys. If you're tuning in, it's my first time.
I looked while you were talking there, Chase, and there's not a lot of numbers actually about the switch from Protestantism to Orthodox churches. However, one of the deciding things, and this isn't that surprising, but most of Eastern Orthodoxy's converts into Eastern Orthodoxy in the US are from Protestants. So not necessarily not in Christians or Buddhists or something like that. Like most of the people who are joining Eastern Orthodox churches, they do have the data on that, is from Protestant churches. So that's interesting.
That makes sense to me because I really think like that's part of what we're getting at in this episode is I think that the primary appeal is not doctrinal.
He just said the primary appeal is not doctrinal. I mean, I disagree with him, but maybe it just depends what circles you come from, I guess. Oh, guys, we have it. There we go. We have an ex-Reformed Baptist Calvinist here. So it looks like people are leaving from, your masculine side of Protestantism too, dude.
So I don't think that it's because if it was doctrinal and it was all the claims of, well, we have the church fathers and we have the true tradition, we have this and we have, our councils were correct. And, that were, we had this council, but they ignored our council, blah, blah, blah. And if it was really an argument from history and tradition.
Yeah, blah, 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 because you have no idea what the hell I'm talking. I guarantee you, like, if I go react to those Eastern Orthodox videos, the only guy that I could kind of engage with his arguments is Joshua Shupin because he was a priest, an Eastern Orthodox priest for a long time, so he has some, form of understanding. But if it's just Joel Webben like by himself yapping about orthodoxy, like it's gonna be blah 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 church council. Like you have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
Tradition and authority, an argument from authority, and it was a persuasive argument, a powerful argument, a true argument. Then I think you would have there'd be no there would be no respecters of converts from Protestants or from Roman.
Thank you for the $5, Wilder. Wilder says America will never be Orthodox. I'm sure the Romans said something similar. Exactly, the Romans were pagan for a long time, and I'm sure they never thought that the Roman Empire was going to be Christianized. And oh boy, were they wrong, right? Because being pagan, right, these sort of the pantheon of Roman gods, like that was the Roman culture, dude. So that's a good point. That's a good point, Wilder.
Catholicism, you'd have just as many Catholics, I think in theory that are like, man, they have the superior argument. They have an argument from tradition and from authority and from this and from that. But you don't have a bunch of RC, Roman Catholics in America,
Wait, what did he say? He said there is
argument from
tradition when it comes to Protestantism.
I think, Roman Catholics of converts from Protestants or from, Roman Catholicism. You'd have just as many Catholics, I think in theory that are like, man, they have the superior argument. They have an argument from tradition and from authority and from this and from that. But you don't have a bunch of RC, Roman Catholics in America, transferring over to Eastern Orthodoxy. And I think the reason why is, I think it's plain. The reason why is because the chief appeal, the chief attraction, I think is it's the intangibles. It's not the actual doctrinal arguments or arguments from authority or tradition or history. It's the intangible aesthetics and the.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a bunch of nonsense. Intellectual bias. Yeah, exactly. Just so close-minded.
Feel And it's my church.
I don't, I think all this aesthetic appeal is good. I know a lot of, I don't know a lot, but I hear of young men that come for the aesthetic appeal. But I think it's 100% intellectual, dude. Like just to dismiss the intellectual I think unless he's saying like I think it's mostly, which I still disagree with him. If he's saying I think it's mostly aesthetic appeal, I still disagree with that claim too. I think it's a lot of intellectual. I think you can't argue with the historical. Like you don't even have to dig through the doctrinal arguments. Like there's just very simple historical like Protestant theology, doctrine, they don't exist anywhere in church history, dude. They don't exist anywhere in church history, pre the Reformation. Just doesn't exist at all. You can cherry pick certain church fathers to try to, argue for sola scriptura and stuff like you guys love to, right? Cherry pick Augustine, who, by the way, isn't Western. Like, St. Augustine is North African, dude. So like even you guys, like a lot of your theology when you guys go back to the patristics is a bunch of Eastern dudes. So that's hilarious too. But like if you try to cherry pick like these guys' writings, like it's very simple to refute that. Like you just look at what guys like St. Augustine, for example, of Hippo believed. He didn't believe anything you believe, dude. Like St. Augustine thought like you needed, he thought Jerusalem, right, the see of you needed to submit to the see of Jerusalem, right? If you were in communion with Jerusalem, you weren't Orthodox, right? Like he believed in you were right in patriarch. He believed in the real presence, like all these things, like nothing that you believed. So like it's also fallacious to try and find these things in church history, like the sola. They just don't exist, dude. They just don't exist.
Is a TED Talk with smoke machines, Jesus is my boyfriend, music, and that's on a good day when they're open. But they instead transformed our church for 18 months into a vaccine clinic, of also that masculine aspect of the even in the aesthetics of the architecture of the vaulted ceilings that speak.
I don't care about this stuff.
To the transcendence of God.
We live in such a sentimental age. People are drawn more to beauty and aesthetics more.
Do these guys look like those dudes that like drink? But Calvinists are very anti-alcohol, are they not? But these dudes look like they drink like those draft beers. They look like those beer dudes online. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like they kind of have like that comb over. They have that mustache, like a little bit of a 9 o'clock shadow going on everywhere else. And they're just like, you gotta try this beer, dude. You gotta try this beer, bro.
Then they let on. Most people like to think they're rational creatures that make decisions.
Yeah, exactly. IPAs. That's what I'm thinking of. Those dudes that drink IPAs. I thought like Reformed Baptist, Cal, whatever these guys, I thought they were very like anti-alcohol periods, like fully prohibited within their circles. But I don't know, I might be wrong.
Because they made a good argument. And most often case, we will do things and then justify our behavior and find rational arguments that justify what we've done. But in the same way, we're drawn to beauty. We're drawn to this where there's not a lot of accountability, not a lot. People are like, no, there's got to be more to life than this. And so they're looking for churches that are going to speak to that are going.
A profound tragedy and a profound irony as well that like the Protestant faith allows for, if you have bread, wine, water, and a Bible, you can do church, and 2 or 3 people. And
there you go, guys. Like this sort of lowest common denominator thinking within Protestantism. And look at this idiot smiling at it. Dude. Bro, did you hear what he said? Bread, wine, and the Bible's all you need. And you can do church, man. That's all we as Bible-believing Christians need, man. You need some wine, you need some bread, and you need a Bible. Like this sort of lowest common denominator thinking is the reason why you have so many damn sects within freaking Protestantism, dude. Because like you're just this is all you need to be a Christian, and then people run up with that and like create whatever form of Christianity they wish to abide by. Like there's no boundaries, there's no church fathers, nothing. It's just Bible, dude. So however you interpret that Bible, get some wine for communion, man. I mean, some people do the grape juice. Like we're not about that. You gotta have real wine and then bread. Like look at this idiot. That's all. Like they think like they're saying something profound. Like this is like it's mind-boggling how like low IQ this is. Like it's hilarious, dude. Like are these guys like incapable of thinking outside of like these low tier, low IQ cliche? And bro, I didn't need the Bible. It's a wine. It's a bread. Like, oh, like bro, I know like I'm not the smartest guy out there, right? Like I'm an ortho bro, right? I'm just a dumb ortho bro, dude. Like, but like, bro, what the hell is like? We gotta come up with a name for these dudes, like prod bros or something. Like, these dudes are like, like this some like real just low IQ. I'm trying not to curse. Low IQ garbage, bro. Like it's hilarious.
Souls, and you can do church. That'll do.
Look at that guy's. Wait, hold on, wait.
You know, and 2 or 3 people, souls, and you can do church. That'll do. And
look how proud Joel is of what he just said. Like, look at his face. Look how proud he is of like just like the most retarded thing. Yeah, like look how proud he is of what he just said. You just need 3 things: wine, bread, and a Bible. And he's got to like look at all the other people, be like, see their like reactions to it, like pat his ego, like, yeah, I'm gonna tweet that later, guys. I'm gonna tweet that later.
and yet we've added all these elements, but we've added all the elements are derived all because I don't think that it means you only I don't think my point is the Protestant faith.
Okay, now he's like okay, so he does have a he does have some brains in that, and now he's like kind of backtrack. He's like, hey, you know what? Look at him, like he's contemplating. He's like, you know what? That was probably like pretty retarded, actually, what I just said. What I'm actually trying to say is, that's not all you need. Why? Like, you just backtrack. Like this is hilarious.
There's a divine simplicity there.
Okay. There you go, dude. You get out of that one, dude. Like, woo! It's like when you like make your way into like a sentence, and then you don't know how to get out of that sentence. You're like, well, what I'm trying, divine simplicity.
And you can do it anywhere. Okay, to use an analogy.
This is about to be good. About to be a good analogy, bro.
I think there's a reason why soccer or football is
Football.
Like a global sport, because all you got to do is put like 2 twigs in the ground.
Bro, like really? That's the analogy. Like he's giving that analogy to like the divine simplicity of Protestantism. It's like for football, all you need is a soccer ball and some goals, man, and some grass and some, in a pitch. Like that, like bro. What? That's what Protestantism is. It's just a sports analogy.
And have a ball. Whereas like water polo, you know,
Yeah, I mean, you can give these things to people. They're gonna invent their versions of what football is. Like he's like, you see how like there's a bunch of things that are just right that he's just assuming within these things. Like he thinks like if you give these people right like some some goalposts or whatever and a soccer ball, like they're all just gonna invent soccer and play it the same exact way, which is not true at all. Like if you were to do that, and like that's exactly the problem with Protestantism. You're gonna have various sects if you just boil it down to this like sort of low tier simplicity that he's calling divine simplicity, which he's not even like defining divine simplicity properly, at least the way it's understood in Roman Catholicism.
like Uganda's probably not gonna be winning any competitions in water polo anytime soon. Like because
is that like a racial joke? It's because they're black. Was that a racial joke, dude? Brother, are you racist, brother? Brother, do you think because the people of Uganda are black, they're dark skinned, they cannot swim, brother? Brother, you need to repent. Brother Joel, you need to repent. I love you, brother. I love you, brother Joel, but you need to repent, brother.
It mandates means of you have to be able to have access to some of these things. Like the Protestant faith really can thrive everywhere. It can thrive in the first world.
I also like how like when they get into these conversations, it kind of reminds me of conversations with Muslims. When they get into these conversations, they're just like, again, like presuppositions. Like they're just assuming like Protestantism is just like this one thing, right? Like Protestantism isn't in shambles. Like Protestantism isn't right freaking 50,000 denominations. Like Protestantism can thrive, and it kind of comes from their ecumenist right minds. Like the Protestantism, it's this sort of blanket in its blanket terminology is essentially this paradigm is just ecumenist. It's religious relativism. It's just what it is. But it's like you're in the same boat as like Muslims where they're like Islam, but it's like really in Islam, right? There's all these beefs between the different akidas, or like Hinduism. No, this is true. Like I've had conversations with the Hindus. They're like, no, this is true Hinduism. There's one deity, but then you have like freaking 100,000 sects of Hinduism that disagree with each other. Like they're just like not even addressing any of these things, and that's like the biggest issue. Like when you even to get up and give an argument for Protestantism, like you have to give an argument for like a certain type of Protestantism. Like maybe like the classical Protestant, the reformers held, which by the way, like these guys don't even hold to. They disagree with a bunch of stuff the reformers believe. Like you have to give a case for like this sort of like very specific version of niche version of Protestantism, which by the way, we don't have in Eastern Orthodoxy. When we argue on behalf of Eastern Orthodoxy, we are in doctrinal and dogmatic agreement, right? There's like theologumena things, right? Things that aren't like really doctrinal that like you can disagree on and have differences on. But like when you argue for like the Eastern Orthodox worldview, you are arguing on behalf of everyone. That's why it's also such a big deal of like a lot of times, you should have a blessing from your priest if you want to talk about these things online, or like you probably shouldn't be talking about these things like if you're like an inquirer or something, right? Or if like you don't even go to church and you engage in things, right? Because you're literally like arguing on behalf of these giants of the faith, right? The fathers of the church, right? The historical Orthodox church. That you can't even say that in Protestantism, dude. Like they just presuppose that they're just arguing on behalf of all Protestants, but they're not, dude. They disagree among each other on a bunch of things that are central to the faith. They're central to their faith, but they'll just say like, "Oh no, as long as you believe in Jesus, that's all that matters," which is like not true at all.
It can thrive in the third world. It can thrive in developing worlds. It can thrive in sub-Saharan Africa or in the West or in the East, and in all these different places because of its simplicity. And it doesn't mean to possibly imagine what has been popular for 15 minutes.
And that's the other, he keeps touching on the simplicity aspect, and that's the other thing. I think what makes Protestantism popular is because Protestantism is a watered down, sissified version of Christianity, if you want to call it that, and the sort of official term of Christianity. I think nominally you could say they're Christian. I don't think they're really Christians. I've made that argument before, but sorry, I just lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
Fad like
on
that.
the simplicity aspect of it, yeah. So the reason why Protestantism, is quote unquote popular is because of this sort of it's this cheap version of Christianity that they just offer to people. Right? It's easy, right? You approach someone in salvation is static within Protestantism. You approach someone and they could be saved on the spot right there. There is no this concept of working out your salvation, right? Working towards something really, really struggling, fighting your passions, right? You have this prayer rule that you have to abide by. And then when you go to confessions and then you confess certain things and the priest, sort of prescribe something to you. And now on top of your prayer rule, you have to say 200, Jesus prayers, during the day or something, or make time for that. And it's that form of Christianity is not very easy to sell, right? Because it's serious. And that's what a lot of people that come into the church, right? They sort of people that come for these aesthetic reasons and it's cool, it's beautiful, Orthodoxy is this and that. And they come in and they're like, well, what are you guys doing? And we're like, oh, it's great Lent. We're fasting and these are the restrictions and we're doing this for this long. And then people are like, what? Especially people that come from Protestant back, that's hard. That's hard. Bingo. That's what real Christianity. It's serious. Even the aspect of confessions. If you want to take your Christianity seriously, right? You should be confessing to your priest weekly, pretty much. But you always have someone there that is just holding you accountable for things you do. If you have a habitual porn addiction, I guess you could be dishonest to your priest, but then you're just not taking your Christianity seriously. But if you want to take your Christianity seriously, you're every week you're confessing to your priest, and your priest holds you accountable. And if your priest sees no change in you, if you're not listening to the things the priest may add to your prayer rules and have you do, he can bar you from communion. You're not going to take communion until you're not going to take communion until you stop confessing to me that you watch pornography this week, for example. It's serious. The faith is serious, which Protestantism, the various sects of it does not have that aspect. There is no this struggle for this, to become godlike in the sense of the end process of theosis. This just doesn't exist in Protestantism. Even things we read some of the saints, those saints will say things even let's say you're doing 100 Jesus prayers a day. Even if one of those Jesus prayers lands, meaning you just kind of quickly said the other 90, but one you really, really thought about, that was a successful prayer. Or on the topic of prayer, within Protestantism, everything is this sort of well, if you don't feel it in your heart, then just don't do it. It's going to be useless. Well, if you don't feel like praying, then just don't pray. We have saints that say that those are the attacks of the enemy. no, like pray, like saints constantly say, like, no, like most of the time, like it's right, it's work. You're taking up the cross when you go and do your prayer rule, because like let's say you're tired. Let's say you come home, it's 12 a.m. You're tired, this and that, and you just want to go to bed. And Protestants will just say a short little prayer and go to bed, or maybe they're like, I don't feel like praying. Why would I say it? It's not going to be genuine. No, go before your prayer corner. Do your prostrations if you do them. Do your prayer rule. Like it's real Christianity, and that's hard to sell. And like they're talking about this divine simplicity, like what they're really saying is like Protestantism is cheap. It's really easy to sell to people. That's why it can thrive in Africa. That's why it can thrive in India. That's why it can thrive in all of East Asia. Because it's cheap. It's easy, dude. Are you saved? Have you accepted Jesus into your heart? Yes, you're saved, bro, dude. You're saved, dude. Well, actually, also like you should probably find a church, dude. But like you're saved right now. Just know that, dude. Assurance of salvation, bro. Like that's it. It's so easy to sell. Like Orthodoxy is not that. Orthodoxy is real. It's serious Christianity. It's the Christianity that those very first century Christians, the Protestants, like to appeal to, of saying that they held their views, followed. They followed Orthodoxy. They were serious about their faith. They rejected things of this world. They lived in these physical communities. They helped one another. Like they struggled for the faith. Protestantism it doesn't have this, dude. It's not divine simplicity, dude. It's just cheap heterodoxy. That's what it is. It's a cheap version of Christianity.
So whether it be laser lights or smoke machine or plexiglass.
Again, like they keep going back to like this low tier evangelicals. Like we don't care about where. Like let's talk about your version of Christianity, dude. Like he's just here, just like he's defending Protestants, but he's trashing on evangelicals, who I believe are like the largest sect within Protestantism, and saying like, oh, but these guys aren't true Protestants, dude. Right? They're fakes. They're a bunch of bullshitters, dude. He's defending Protestantism while at the same time just trashing evangelicals. Who, like, I'm pretty sure evangelicals are the biggest sect within Protestantism, like whatever you consider this, evangelicals. Because their churches are massive, bro.
Pulpits, or having a woman on stage.
Check your brain at the door when you go to an evangelical church, which is just not true. There's many brilliant evangelicals. I would say that
this guy's sort of fighting back. He's defending evangelicals.
The same could be said of someone who wants to join the Eastern Orthodox tradition. You really don't have to understand everything. You just have to like submit to tradition. And in that way, I think it's.
Thank you for the $5, Wilder. But now, much more in my absence, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Philippians 2:12 seems to be completely lost on Protestants. Exactly. Work out your salvation. Yeah, Protestants sort of just have this, static concept of salvation. They sort of ignore all the other right scriptures that speak of salvation in the present tense, in the future tense, in the past tense, and they just ignore these, and they're like this hyper focused on like present salvation. Like that's it. Like scripture is holistic, dude. Like this is the approach of Orthodoxy, as you guys all know that are Orthodox Christians or even catechumens. Like it's holistic. Right, that's why you hear priests say like, I believe the Orthodox Study Bible also says this, right? We are being saved, we were saved, and we are saved. Protestantism kind of focus on we were saved and we are saved, and they just ignore these aspects of we will be saved. That's like heresy in Protestantism, dude. That's salvation by works, dude. And they like try to reconcile it within their Protestant paradigm of like, but how do we make of these verses, like Philippians 2:12? They can't.
Meeting a certain felt need that people have today, where they're having to make decisions left and right, and they're experiencing what some call decision fatigue, worldview of commodification of every
Question of what should Protestant churches practically do to kind of capture back some of that. So why don't you go ahead and then we'll maybe wrap up with that.
Yeah, let's do that in the third segment. Chase, do you have time? We're going to go to a commercial break here in about 5 minutes and then come back just for a moment on doctrine. Are there any, what would be the doctrinal red flags? What would be the things that you're like, oh, that's doctrinally, I don't like that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're getting into like doctrinal critiques of like Protestantism. Like what version of Protestantism?
Yeah, I kind of looked into it a little bit. In seminary, I took some classes that dealt with Eastern Orthodoxy, but since I spoke about it on my own
we're talking about Eastern Orthodoxy. Okay, this should be interesting.
Podcast, and we're speaking about it today. I've looked into it a little bit more deeply on the stuff I already knew. And I think doctrinally, my big thing is like the way it shapes you as a human, the way it shapes you and treats you as a person is very different than Protestantism. And even the apprehension of God, how we understand who God to be. For example, in salvation, you know, in the Protestant tradition, we have faith alone. You put your faith in Jesus Christ, you repent of your sins, you become a new creation, and you become a Christian. In the Eastern Orthodox tradition, it's going to be in the church. You know, that's where you find salvation. We can find this in the Protestant tradition, but not in the same way. And that's the danger doctrinally with a lot of this, is we're using
what's the danger doctrinally with this?
Similar words.
Salvation is within the church, right? Christ is the head of the church, and the body of the believers, that's the body of Christ, and salvation is within that body of Christ. When you're outside the bounds of the church, you're outside of the body of Christ, and Christ is not your head anymore.
But we're saying very different things. So you'll hear John Calvin and others in the Protestant tradition talking about the church being the mother. There's no salvation outside the church. But
they have a completely different concept of what church is, right? So like when we're talking about the church, we're talking about two completely different things.
They mean it in a different way than the Eastern Orthodox, where truly like it's not that they don't care about justification by faith. They don't even that's not even on their radar as far as a doctrinal concern, if that makes sense. Like just because of the way their doctrine and theology has developed over time. So for a Protestant who's clear on Christ's penal substitutionary death and justification,
which is, I don't know if I've like extensively talked about penal substitutionary atonement on here. But those of you guys that are within apologetic circles are familiar with penal substitutionary atonement and how problematic it is. Now, Orthodoxy doesn't reject, right, sort of the substitution aspect of things. Orthodoxy doesn't have sort of, one atonement theory that we adhere to, although, the central theme is Christus Victor. But essentially, like, just, in short, and you guys can find a bunch of content on this, especially from Jay Dyer. I mean, PSA is anti-Trinitarian. Penal substitutionary atonement is anti-Trinitarian. It's the Father damning the Son to hell. He damns the Son. That splits the Trinity. That's anti-Trinitarian. Right? It's whatever form of anti-Trinitarianism you want to pick, that's what it is. It's just flat out heresy. Like whatever route you take when it comes to PSA, it's just flat out heresy. So it's just wild to me that like these guys who claim to be intellectuals can even hold on to this theory. Like it doesn't even make sense to me, right? Like the first person of the Trinity condemns the second person of the Trinity. Huh? Like make it make sense.
In Christ, to then switch to Eastern Orthodoxy, that's like it's a different rule book. It's a different language completely theological.
What's his critique? Like we're theologically different. Like that's very clear. Like what's the critique here?
Logically, we have more in common with Roman Catholics. You might have already highlighted this.
No shit, because you're just an offshoot of Roman Catholicism. You protested against the Roman Catholic Church. Saint Papovich, what's his first name? In his book, essentially he talks about ecumenism. what is his first name? He's the Romanian saint. I believe the Romanian saint. Justin Popovich. Saint Justin Popovich. No, he's a Serbian saint. My fault. He's a Serbian saint. He was, lived throughout that whole ecumenist movement, right in like the early 1920s when like the revised calendar was established. He lived through that sort of era. And I don't remember exactly what he says, but he essentially says something along the lines of that Protestants are just, he's like very straightforward and kind of crude. So they're kind of like, they're just the dogs of the papists. So yeah, you're gonna have more in common with the Roman Catholics, which is funny because like you guys love to trash the Roman Catholics. Who are your daddies, dude? By the way, like they're your daddies, dude. You're their little sons.
Than Eastern Orthodox in terms of our own Western tradition. Of course, one of the great theological controversies was about the filioque or filioque, and you'll see in their own tradition.
Filioque? Bro, learn Latin.
There is some kind of back and forth on what it meant. Was it just semantics?
You can tell that like within Protestant seminaries. By the way, I'm very familiar with like the curriculum of Protestant seminaries. There's not a whole lot of teaching on patristics in church history. Because like when they start talking about these things, like this guy is clueless. Like just even like I'm picking on like small things, but like even the way that he's pronouncing the different terms, like you can tell like he studied this on his own at some point. Like this isn't like they just breeze through this in Protestant seminaries, dude. And then they get into the most important part of history, Reformation and so on.
Was it a big issue? But I think one of the things that really strikes me in Eastern Orthodoxy is the iconography, the kind of veneration of
So it sounds like the typical things that people coming from a Protestant background struggle with. Which is wild to me because here's the thing, guys. I have people within my family that I've had extensive conversation with when it comes to like Orthodoxy and Protestantism. And the people within my family that are part of the Protestant tradition that are like openly they've discussed these things with me and they've understood these things properly, have no issues with this like low tier stuff. A lot of their issues are kind of like their path that like iconography is not problematic for a lot of Protestants that like actually talk about this and address it. Like iconography is not problematic. Veneration of saints is not problematic. It's just certain things for them that I think are difficult when it comes to like these sort of ritualistic things within service. At least the people within my family, like my extended family and so on, like things to them like like kissing the priest's hand, like things like that to them is like why do I have to do that? But like theologically understanding like iconography, veneration of saints, Mariology and things like that are not and by the way, I've made videos on this. Well, like this is like iconography is like low tier stuff. Veneration of saints, it's like low tier stuff. Like you can tell like these guys like just started like Wikipedia Googling and searching into Eastern Orthodoxy and like I've never really like engaged in like the opposing views and like the answers to these things because this is just low tier stuff. Iconography is a low tier stuff.
As far as they say, they don't worship these icons, even though to Protestants we would say.
I mean, bro, this is such like guys, just go check out my videos on it. I have some short videos on this. On veneration of saints, I have one that I did in Ukrainian, so just read the subtitles. Where I address iconography, veneration of saints, and then I have one on a little bit on Mariology. But just like this is just low tier shit, guys. Like I know like people that are like coming. This is like stuff people coming like inquiring to the church are thinking about. That's what this is.
That's what it seems like to me. They venerate these icons, but even like how they understand hell, for example. Whereas Protestants have a tradition of thinking of heaven and hell as realms and even places. Hell in the Eastern Orthodox tradition and heaven in the Eastern Orthodox tradition isn't necessarily a realm or a place. Hell is an absence of God's grace, and it's a state of being almost. And that it gets into kind of the experiential aspect of Eastern Orthodoxy and kind of the mystical components. And that cultivates humans that are trained to perceive the world in a way that's just utterly different. And so there are just really on all sorts.
You know what, these people kiss their cars, their guns, their golf carts. Exactly. They kiss the Bible, so they venerate the Bible. They're okay with venerating the Bible. I mean, like, this is such low tier stuff that, like, I don't even want to talk about it.
Sorts of doctrinal matters, such severe differences. Not that they, I'm not necessarily claiming that those who are Eastern Orthodox are outside the faith, but they're just
there's that ecumenism. All right, so this is
very different, and I think it's very saying the same thing when we're not actually saying.
So he's not really like getting to anything good at all. We have issues with icons. We have issues with veneration of saints. Yeah, stuff we hear, you know, on the daily, recycled stuff, low tier stuff. Like most Protestants that have, like, these guys for being intellectuals, like, and that's still being their critique. I think it just shows me that, like, a lot of these guys that, you know, claim to be intellectuals within these spheres of these Calvinist circles, I think they're just like genuinely like closed-minded. Like they're just closed off. Like they're not interested in these answers. They're just, to them it's just personal incredulity fallacies. Like they're just not. I'm just not convinced. Just not convinced. It just doesn't feel right, dude. I feel like that's, at the end of the day, that's their end response. I'm just not convinced. Just not convinced. I'm just not convinced. You know, Joshua, you know, falls before the Ark of the Covenant. You know, he prostrates. I'm just not convinced. It's different. Old Testament. I'm not convinced. Like, it's just low tier stuff, dude.
Saying the same thing. You know, they have an experience of God where theosis is a big deal and becoming like God is a big deal. But even when we say that, we're meaning becoming more Christ-like, more human in a sense. We should live in.
Yeah, like the Protestant version is sort of like sanctification, which is like the closest thing I would say to theosis. But sanctification is only like in one aspect of theosis. So it just shows you how, like, as scholastic as the West is, like, these doctrines are so underdeveloped compared to, right, Eastern Orthodoxy, which is like very anti-scholasticism, right? Like Eastern Orthodoxy is like apathetic theology, right? A lot of negative theology, no like positive assertion, things like that. And like still like these doctrines of like, right, becoming Christ-like, sanctification, as they call it, it's like are just like aspects of theosis. And like the fathers, you know, talk about this extensively.
To our full humanity, and they mean something very different than that. And so those are some of the doctrinal things that I've noticed, that there's just a totally different language that they're using.
Right. Penal substitutionary atonement is also a big one. So I do think that Protestants, we would do well to add as a supplement, not as a substitute. So not to replace, but to add to penal substitute. I believe penal substitution, substitutionary.
And here's the thing, not even all Protestants hold to penal substitutionary atonement. Like, I have a good Protestant friend that's like thought through this theory, through this atonement theory, and he goes to a church that I think the majority would hold to this, but he just outright rejects it because of the, you know, the conversations we've had and the digging he's done through it. Right, he just outright rejects PSA.
Atonement, the idea that that Christ, our sin, was imputed to him. He who knew no sin became, so not as
imputed sin, Western stuff, imputed guilt, blah 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 blah.
Spirits to public shame, that there's that something changed in this victorious Christ. You can hold to those elements and still hold to penal substitutionary atonement, because
no, you can't. No,
it's addressing two different doctrinal.
No, you can't. It's anti-Trinitarian. Like, guys, Jay Dyer has done like extensive streams, like long streams on this. I don't know if I've ever talked about it, extensively, but maybe I should do a stream on it. But it's just like, here's the thing, guys. A lot of these things are like so like just over talked about that a lot of the topics like that people ask me to address, I think it's because they like specifically follow me, right? They enjoy my content, etc. They want me to address a lot of times. I'm like, dude, like so many Orthodox channels out there have talked about this. It's just like exhaustive, right? Like me talking about it would just be like repeating a lot of the things that like Jay Dyer has done, or David Erhan, or one of the priests, Orthodox Shahad or whatever, Orthodox, ethos with Father Peter here. Like a lot of these things are like they've talked about these things extensively. Like sure, like I might give different nuances to it, and then like hearing it from me, like maybe you're not too familiar with some of these guys, but it's like this stuff is just out there, dude, on YouTube for free. Like just go check it out.
Issues. But in my reading from Eastern Orthodoxy, their perspective, penal substitutionary atonement is kind of like what you were saying with justification by faith, Chase. But penal substitutionary atonement it's just not talked about. It's just
because it's just flat out anti-Trinitarian. I would love to have this conversation with him, bro.
silent. It's only Christus Victor. And so,
see, again, this shows how much research is like this is just not true. Like we don't hold to some one strict atonement theory in Orthodoxy. Like this is not true. We incorporate all aspects of various different atonement theories. Like this is just not true. Like, bro, you just like read some freaking Wikipedia articles, dude, and did some like basic Googling. Like he said, from my reading of Eastern Orthodox, like what reading have you done, dude? Like a bunch of freaking Wikipedia articles. Then you watch like maybe one Jay Dyer stream. I don't know if he's actually like. What have you done, dude? You read Joshua Shuping's book on like how you let like. You haven't done nothing, dude. Like what church fathers have you read, Joel? You're a pastor of a church. Like I believe you're finished some sort of seminary. Like what church fathers have you read?
So the idea even of
just reading the church fathers, like you're gonna understand these freaking basic, right, historical understandings of the various atonement theories that the different church fathers speak on and they incorporate. Yeah, Christus Victor is kind of the main thing, but like there's no one defined atonement theory in Orthodoxy. We don't reject like the substitutionary aspects. Like we reject the right PSA, as in like the Father, right, pouring out his wrath and condemning the Son. It's anti-Trinitarian. It's simple as that. It's not that deep.
Jesus died on the cross for sin. And how he did that, particularly, he took my sin and on the cross took the wrath of God.
This is exactly the issue we have with PSA.
It was merited by my
right. So the Father within the Trinity is angry at the Son within the Trinity, who by the way are in union. They're distinct from one another, right? They're distinct. They're in union. They share one essence, but he pours out his wrath on the Son and he condemns the Son to hell, essentially. Like like as somebody who claims to be this sort of intellectual and this proponent of Protestant theology online, like it's like, is this going over your head? Like, is this not like this is going over your head, dude?
sin that I deserved, and he took it for me. And so that the wrath of God, this cup, the white hot wrath of God, was poured out on Christ to the point of every drop.
To you just split the Trinity. You just split the Trinity, dude.
It was empty. So there is no wrath that remains towards God's earth. Then they can help you in the Anglican diocese.
Let's see, what else do they get into here?
A reform movement over the past.
Citizens and have been citizens for a long time. There's certain prudential measures that should be.
How do you help someone who's thinking of going in that direction?
What would you say, Chase?
Yeah, I would want to meet with them, especially if they're a member of my church, particularly, but just generally, if they were a Protestant Christian, evangelical Christian, was thinking of doing that, I would want to have a lot of discussions around why, what is the draw? A question I always ask when I'm pastoring is, what do you want? What do
Okay, so they're just sort of getting into the aspects of like, what do we do? Like, right? How do we save face? How do we retain Christians within our Protestant churches and stop them from like you're not gonna stop it. This is beyond you guys. Like this is the work of God. Like this is just far beyond you. You're not gonna stand in the way of God. Like this is far beyond you. This is kind of similar to like Redeemed Zoomer online, who just sort of like accidentally became an Protestant apologist, but really he was just kind of like an ecumenical Christian that just wanted to bring people to Christianity. But so many people were leaving Protestantism that he got into the apologetics aspect and like the debate sphere to try and keep people within Protestantism and failed to do so. Still massive numbers of apostasy from Protestantism. And RZ, who probably doesn't have the credentials you guys have. I don't think he has a seminary degree or anything. Has a much greater reach and greater influence than you guys, I would say, when it comes to like online, right, influence, and unable to do so because it's beyond you guys. It's beyond you. People are finding the fullness of the truth, which is within the Orthodox Church. Like you having a conversation with them is not going to do anything. They're going to have a conversation with you, and then they're going to go and they're going to talk to somebody like myself or some other Orthodox influencer or maybe a priest, and all the things that you brought up to them, they're going to bring up to me, and I'm going to give them responses to those things. And they're going to say, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." So if we both give two like compelling intellectual arguments, at the end of the day, right, it just comes down to like you guys said, maybe like, okay, what am I feeling then? He brought up these things. I talked to Val. Val gave me, sort of the Orthodox answers to all these things. Well, do I want to be in like this, this, and now it comes to like the aesthetic thing. Now, do I want to be in like this, like sort of empty, boring Protestant church, or do we want to go to church that's colorful, beautiful, iconography, everywhere, has this rich history, all these things? They're going to go to Orthodoxy. They're going to go to Orthodoxy. If there's two good, let's say like we just give both of us give equally compelling intellectual arguments, and it just comes down to everything else outside of those arguments. Like those very things you guys talked about, why people are leaving and coming to Orthodoxy. They're going to choose Orthodoxy. Orthodoxy has way better aesthetics. Orthodoxy has a history, ancient history, compared to the Protestant history. Orthodoxy has beauty, all these things. It doesn't exist in your tradition. It just doesn't exist. Nobody wants to go to your church and you standing there on stage with your blazer and your mustache and your 9 o'clock shadow and your comb over. No, they want to walk into a temple of God, and they want to see an ordained priest, right, in his garments, with his long beard, with his long hair. Like, they don't want to go and listen to you behind a podium, just talk for 45 minutes, dude. So if you want to come at it from that perspective, yeah. Nobody wants to be Protestant, dude. Maybe high church Protestantism has some sort of compelling case for it. American Protestantism, high church Protestantism is tiny compared to low church Protestantism. High church Protestantism is anti-American as well, so you have no compelling case.
you after? Jesus asks this question frequently to people, and you can hear them.
Anyways, I skipped through a bunch of it. I listened way too much of this than I even wanted to.
Loves Jesus.
Or not worship.
As long as you love Jesus. Anyways, that's enough listening to these these fine fruity men. They look like they're trying very hard to, portray masculinity on the outside, but we all know they're gay. Just to give back what you call the Orthodox, mystical and gay. We know you're gay. We know every Calvinist is gay. It's a joke, guys. It's a joke. Protestants get so caught up in their feelings in my comments all that. Hey man, you're dividing my. I'm tired of hearing like low tier Protestants. So, but the other point I wanted to make is that a lot of the criticisms of Eastern Orthodoxy is that like it's very not American, it's very ethnic, it's something else, right? It's either Middle Eastern, Eastern European, right? Just it's Eastern, which is funny because Greece is like not Eastern, and Greece is Orthodox. Also, a bunch of like church fathers that they love within their seminaries are not Eastern, or sorry, are not Western either. They're Eastern. But essentially, like they're complaining about Orthodoxy being too ethnic, too not American, too other else, and they think that's problematic. Well, at the same time, they're saying they don't want to be Orthodox because they're too Western, they're too ethnically Western. So it's just like, right, this hypocritical, sort of lazy, low IQ argument of like, well, Orthodoxy is too ethnic. Well, also like I'm too Western, so I can't be Orthodox. By the way, there's a Western right, which I have my opinions on, but there's a Western right, and anyways, it's just like a silly, contradicting thing to say. Claim it's too ethnic, yet say you're too American to become Eastern Orthodox. Like, what? It's hilarious, guys. Anyways, I've been on for too long. I think there was we have one more super chat here. Rufus Drew says, "You're doing great, brother. You're doing a great job, brother. Greetings from Indian Orthodox St. Thomas the Apostle." Is that well, that's an Oriental church, I assume. Is that like the one that like incorporated Protestant doctrines within it? Is that the St. Toma Church? I don't know which one that is, but thank you for the super chat. God bless you. I hope if you are part of the Oriental Church, you come to the fullness of the truth and come into communion with Eastern Orthodoxy, or as we call it, the Church Orthodoxy. All right, thank you guys. God bless you guys. Stay away from Protestantism. I mean, if these are like the best, that they have, and these are their compelling arguments, then any random ortho bro online that converted a year ago, is going to give an answer to this low tier stuff. It just shows you that they don't know anything. They have so much, so far to go to even be in the realm of debating Orthodox Christians. Like the guy that actually does it from a Protestant perspective is like Redeemed Zoomer, right? Like James White won't debate Orthodox Christian, he only debates Catholic. Like Redeemed Zoomer, who's like 24 years old, dude. Like no seminary degree. So like these guys have a long way to go. There's nothing compelling in Protestantism to keep you there or pull you away from Orthodoxy. There's just nothing there. So anyways, thank you guys. God bless you all. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I'll see you guys at another time.